This podcast will teach you a unique time management system that's driven by your own limitless creativity. You're meant to do great things. Here are the skills you need to start doing them. My name is Scott Snow, and I'm a creativity coach and the host of this show. Today's fascinating guest is Arjun Khemani. He's an unconventional high school student from India with an insatiable yearning to understand the world. He's a blogger, podcaster, and writes a newsletter called Amazing Things and Ideas. He's passionate about psychology, creativity, philosophy, and education reform. Between you and I, it was what Arjun said after the interview was done that impressed me the most. He asked me to tell him about myself and my work. No wonder he's so smart. Please welcome Arjun Khemani.
Thanks for having me, Scott. It's great to be here.
I've got a whole bunch of questions for you here. You're a very interesting fellow. I first discovered you on a Google search. I was doing something about, what was it? Oh, Bill Gates and his thinking week, his time away to think. And I really enjoyed how your blog, you really described it really well. And then I just looked and you had more and more interesting info. So thanks for agreeing to be on the show. So Arjun, what are some of the different hats that you wear?
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot of hats I wear, and I'm not really proud of them sometimes, wearing so many hats. But I am a student, but that's just for the sake of it. I'm practically not a student anymore because of all the other hats I wear. So I'm not really a student in the conventional sense of the way because, yeah, I don't just give it as much priority as most people do, or as much as it even at the bare minimum needs. I I have a blog, I have a podcast, a newsletter, among other things I do online, like a Twitter account and stuff. And I've been writing there since the last 2 years and come a long way since then. And um, yeah, it's led to many opportunities, like being able to do copywriting gigs here and there, and also really recently getting a co-authorship, like with an author, like actually having to write a book. So we're working on that together. So yeah, there's these things and other like minor details at school, which I really don't really care about much, but it's still there. And yeah, mostly I'm focusing on my blog, my podcast, and the book. And yeah, then that's pretty much it. That's all the hats I wear.
Love that. So it sounds like you have some very strong beliefs about education. I know that that's one of your big focuses. So what do you believe is missing in the traditional approach to education, and how should it be different?
Sure. So a lot of people have this idea that you want to add something to the education system. Like people will be like, only if they taught money at school, then it'll be, a better education system, or only if health and wellness was a subject at school. But I have a different perspective on this. I'm like, most people learned calculus at school, but you probably don't remember it as uh, as much right now. And so the problem isn't that school isn't teaching some things, but the problem is that school teaches you in the first place. School is teaching you. So I actually, like, I don't have something that I would like to add to the education system, mostly subtract the current way of doing education or schooling. There's a lot of nuances here. Like some people don't like to call the conventional way of doing education, which is schooling, an education in this education mode. And so they'd rather argue that a true education is following one's curiosity and doing what, they are inherently interested in. And so if I were to, like, obviously no one person can do this, but I want to create like some sort of learning webs that allow for the person who has specific knowledge to give it to those people who are interested in getting that knowledge. The internet is a great platform to do it, but unfortunately it hasn't revolutionized the education system yet, though you would think that it should be a great place to start. There's so many YouTube videos, podcasts that you can listen to and gain so much knowledge, and um, sort of break the way education is done. But unfortunately, it hasn't happened. Uh, might be due to some cultural influences there. But yeah, my main idea is to sort of link these uh, these two people, which is one, a person who would want to teach something, not really teach, but like provide explanations to the student who's willing to learn. And this needn't happen with credentials or whatnot.
So maybe a different approach with the education would allow students to be more curious and to bring about their own strengths, what they're interested in more.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. And what is the focus of your book?
The focus of my book, which we've just started working on very recently, is about constraints and how constraints can help one make progress. So, we just talked about the education system, and it would seem sort of counterintuitive to put it right here about constraints being good. But then there's two different types of constraints. One is like a coercive kind, which is the definition of schooling. They're, very coercive and authoritarian and whatnot. But another is sort of non-coercive, but constraints that are good. So these constraints are like, the rules of chess. Those without the rules of chess, you wouldn't be able to play the game, or you wouldn't be able to have the fun that people do with those rules. And so there's this analogy can lead to many, many different places for like progress as a whole in science, in economics, in politics. And so we're just trying to distill these in various places.
And I noticed that you wrote a lot about journaling and your process for journaling, and I've always believed that journaling is such a fantastic habit to get into for creativity and for wellness and being reflective. So, what's your process for journaling, and what are some of the benefits do you think of journaling for my listeners?
Sure, journaling definitely changed a lot of my life. Like before journaling, I was sort of all over the place and, never really had that time to intentionally put down all the things that were in my mind onto like a pen and paper. It just, everyone who's had a journal might be knowing this feeling that, when you're putting stuff down on that pen and paper, it just makes you feel good and intentional and just calmer uh, instantaneously. So my process of journaling, I have worked around a few, but I usually do morning pages, which is just writing 2 or 3 pages just from the top of your head, like right after you've gotten up. So I'd usually either do some meditation or journaling after I've woken up at 4:45 a.m. sharp, like after having water and stuff, of course. And then that would just be, just a mental uh, brainwash of like just getting all the words out on the paper. And some more frameworks that I use for journaling are, well, I ask myself like what Benjamin Franklin did to himself, like the two questions of the day. So the morning question would be, okay, what good shall I do this day? And the evening question would be, what good have I done this day? And so I answer both of these questions in my journal as well. The 5 minute journal,
Okay.
do you know about it?
I saw it in your blog post, but no, I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, okay. So it like it's a journal, but then I do it on my journal. It's a notebook in its own right, but it has like a quote at the beginning. Then you can write three things you're grateful for. Then three things that'll make uh, this day good for you. And I think there's daily affirmations. So like I am this dot dot dot. And then at the evening time, you're like talking about three amazing things that happened today and what are some ways I could have made this day even better. Earlier, I
Uh,
used to do this, but then right now, that the two questions from Benjamin Franklin, they just hit hard on it. So I think that's an easier framework. But then, yeah, so this is sort of the daily kind. And when I go to weekly or sort of quarterly, I have these just three questions again. They are, uh, okay, what went good this week? What went well this week? What didn't go so well this week? Or this quarter or this year sometimes. And I'm like, okay, then what have I learned this week, this quarter, or this year? So those are some of the frameworks I use.
hmm. And I find it interesting that you leave out the month. I think you said something in your blog that you didn't feel it was a good amount of time for. Can you explain more?
Yeah, because I think that the month is like sort of a short. So if you're doing like monthly scheduling or monthly reviewing, that's sort of not practically good for me as such, because if I'm doing weekly planning as well, the monthly sort of overlaps with the weekly planning. And the monthly also, it's a short time frame if you really want to do something, some like just even a substantial bit of a project. So I don't really find it helpful to be tracking the monthly time duration, but then the quarterly is a better framework when, like, you have 3 months and you can actually see yourself improving, your habits forming, and then you can review on those habits and just go from there.
I love how you're reflective enough to just say, well, the month doesn't work for me, so I just get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Now, do you write by pen and paper or computer?
All these things I usually, so the daily I do by pen and paper. The the quarterly and yearly ones I like to do on my Notion database. Uh, but yeah, the weekly again on pen and paper, because just the Notion, I do it on Notion because I just like to have a better, so it's just easier to go for me to go there and, like, have it in an organized place so that I can visit it again and again. But maybe on pen and paper it might just slip away somewhere. So yeah,
What's the Notion database?
the Notion database. So you might have heard about Notion before, right?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting because these productivity note-taking apps are like very hype. They have a lot of hype attached to them in the productivity space.
Hmm.
But yeah, like there's different note-taking apps. Like, Apple Notes is the default one that most people use. I like to use Notion because it has many ways that you can, like, just it just has a complete note taking thing. I'm not very good at explaining Notion. There's like countless YouTube videos online, but I use it to have daily brain dumps again. So, like, I know I do it on my journal in the morning, and sometimes in the evening I just have a daily brain dump, like tell everything that happened in the day, or like some just key thing that happened. And then Notion is also there for fleshing out more of my key ideas. So, like, for my books and articles online, I just use it for, like, so if an idea strikes me originally, like, I just put it on my Apple Notes. That's the default place it goes. And then if I want to flesh it out further, it goes onto Notion. So I can just make it better and keep it in an organized way, which is sort of like my second brain in a sense.
Hmm.
And I use those ideas for my blog posts, for my book, and places like that.
Interesting. Okay. I wonder if the All the Hats We Wear podcast appearance will be in your journal tonight.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely gonna be.
That's cool to have a record of, the most important, whatever, 5 things that happen during the day for every day.
Yeah.
With Notion, it sounds like you would be able to look things up. Like if you went to a restaurant, you could look it up, right?
Yeah, the searchability feature of Notion is just incredible. You can look things up that you've written like 7 years ago or something like that. So it's brilliant.
Okay. And obviously, you're a very bright and creative person. What is your process for, like your creative process? How do you get your best ideas? And do you have a way to, incubate ideas and follow them through?
Yeah, I don't really have a very fixed creative you know basis, but because that's sort of like, I tend to think that that will be like, that wouldn't really be very creative if you have a very fixed structure around it. But then I do sort of have some structure that allows me to at least create and then put things out on, a routine basis. And so Notion is actually very helpful there again, because I have these ideas on there and I can just put it into a blog post or a newsletter easily. So I don't have to, I never start on a blank page when I'm writing. So, like, a blank screen and stuff. So I never really have to worry about them. I usually get ideas when I'm not thinking about them. So I, I'm just doing whatever I'm doing out on a nature walk, maybe, or just at home on my desk, on my computer, thinking about something else. And then boom, this idea pops up that's, going to be a great topic for the newsletter. So I put that in the Notion place, and yeah, I get started on them like when I have to, because have deadlines for my newsletter. So, every Sunday my audience expects a new newsletter, and for that I pretty much have to write one. And then do think like I don't so because I don't have enough structure maybe, or because I don't have enough deadlines for other projects, I do find it a little harder to work on them. Maybe also because there's different hats I wear, so there's a lot of things, and life can always get in the way. So uh,
You mentioned your newsletter there, and I don't want to forget to ask you, where can our listeners go for the newsletter and for your podcast and website?
Oh, sure. My website is arjunkhemani.com, so my name.com, and there you'll find all the links to the newsletter, to podcast, everything else.
Okay, and I'll put that in the group notes as well. How do you consume the news, and how does that affect your ideas for the day?
Right. I don't consume the news. I consume more of books, like more of a book reader instead of going through the news. But yeah, so maybe then I'll explain sort of my process of reading books. I I usually so this year I'm like reading probably a book a week, so that's considerably a lot. And yeah, I do want to remember what I read, of course. Sometimes it's like, people get too much into the idea of like you have to remember what you read, but most of the times it's like you sort of have it at the back of your mind. You might not know which author said this or which author said that, but when you're reading, you're just actively absorbing all that information, and your mind is just being carved upon those new words. And so, but still, I like to keep notes of what I'm reading so I can, reference them again and then use them in my own writing. So reading when you're reading a lot, you just sort of automatically tend to like to write. So you write more. And that's how I started writing for my blog. Maybe that's not for everyone, but I see some people who are like avid readers, they sort of tend towards the writing side as well. But so my process of reading books, I highlight stuff that I like. I, write in the margins, don't care about ruining my books, like, with my own words. So that's all cool. And yeah, again, those ideas sort of tend to go to the Apple Notes side and then the Notion side after I flesh them out a little bit more. So if I've read something that's resonated with me a lot, um, I'll just, copy paste that whole paragraph from the book to Apple Notes, then to Notion, then use it into my own writing.
And how old are you?
I'm 16.
So you're a high school student now.
I am. Yeah, I have 2 years remaining.
Okay. Is it in the plan to go to college?
Oh no. I'm definitely taking a gap year after high school. I don't even know how it's gonna be like completing high school, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, college is not in the plan because I want to take a gap year, sort of travel to some places and, work on what I'm already working on, go beyond that. So yeah, that's what I sort of plan to do on the gap year.
Is it a struggle for you since you have a lot of creativity and your own ideas on education? Is it tough for you to, because you have to go to school, right? You have to finish high school. Is it tough to do that?
Oh yeah, it definitely is. Well, yeah, I sort of have to go to high school, but then again, really right now there's like a lot of uncertainty in that space because I'm thinking about, what I want to do, even if it's worth, going through these 1.5 years, 2 years of high school, because I really think they're not worth it. And so it is tough. I do have a lot of friction, with the teachers, with the system, because I tend to question. I tend to question the stuff that you're not supposed to question. And then yeah, I sort of get into trouble for doing that, but I have stopped caring enough because because of the other hats I wear, the thing that I told you about, and it allows me to not worry about school and in the normal way people worry about grades or marks or anything else. So
Hmm.
even my parents, they starting to understand my explanations around schooling, or they're at least happy for me with what I'm doing outside of school, so they don't really force me a lot to study and get good grades. They're basically okay if I pass my tests. So yeah.
What's your approach to goal setting? And what are some of your goals?
Right. I Again, there isn't really a formal structure or system for me to set my goals, but I usually feel very, very inclined to an idea, and that sort of becomes my goal. So recently, so I'm a long distance runner as well, and when you're a long distance runner, you constantly want to challenge uh, the distance you last ran. So the highest distance you last ran, the longest run you had last. And so I've always wanted to, keep on going beyond what I've just been going at. And so for 2021, my goal was like, hitting 21 kilometers, which is a half marathon, doing that for the first time. And I was able to do that in less than 6 months of that year. So that was a pretty cool thing. And just right now, like last week, I sort of had a goal to run a full marathon, a whole year later. I had a goal to run a full marathon. Unfortunately, I broke my tailbone then, so I couldn't finish that right now, but I'm still working on running that full marathon very soon. So, well, like I just feel inclined towards doing certain things. Maybe it's because of certain other influences, like running this full marathon, which was just 6 weeks ago. Like I had this notion that okay, I'm gonna run a marathon in 6 weeks, and I literally just watched a YouTube video of a person running like 50 kilometers in the hottest region in the world, and that was again inspiring at that moment. And just then I just picked up my pen and paper and my journal, and I wrote in there for accountability purposes. I just tweeted it out, put it on my Instagram page that I'm running a marathon in 6 weeks. Sure, that didn't work out. I fractured my tailbone, but yeah, that's sort of the way it goes with these kinds of goals. The bigger goals that I have are, one is changing the education system, so making real progress over there. That's one of the problems I want to work on. So when people ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I say there are a couple problems I want to work on because I think problems are cool and fun to solve. And so one is the education problem, and the other is sending humanity to Mars. So those are like two different problems I want to work on,
Yeah, it
goals I
sounds
want to
like
solve.
you have a couple blog posts about Elon Musk, and I had another question about what you think, how you think Twitter will be different now that he owns it.
Oh yeah, uh, yeah, that's a timely thing, and I really I love the fact that he's owning it right now. I don't have a lot of thoughts on it, but just that, yeah, he's owning it. I think it'll be for the better. It should be for the better because he has these ideas, and I hope they're only for, those ideas that he has preached as of now. So, I think it might be a better place for us, and many of us might not have to worry about being banned on Twitter. So, yeah.
And I think you compared him to like a current time Da Vinci, like a genius of the times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think, he's into a lot of spaces. Uh, if you ask him how he taught himself rocket science, he'll basically tell you that I read a lot of books and I talked to a lot of smart people. And so,
Yeah.
when you can do that, and I think that's a good way to educate yourself and to learn stuff, like
Hmm.
actually learn stuff. And so, yeah, gaining that knowledge, having a love for knowledge, and um, doing something amazing for humanity.
In a way, it seems like you followed a similar path. So maybe you'll be the
Yeah.
next Elon Musk.
Well, yeah, I don't know. That's maybe the goal.
Cool. Now for social media, I know that you're active on Twitter. What else has been helpful to you for social media platforms?
Um, yeah, sure. So Twitter has definitely been the main platform for me. The other one was Discord. It's not really a social media platform, though you can have like, deeper conversations with people than just like tweets and stuff. So you can actually talk to people, text people there, and have these communities placed there. And so yeah, my social media game started when I actually started to, DM people and just cold outreaching them. I like to call them, uh, make your cold DMs warm because you don't want to sound cold when you're, just trying to get to a person. So Twitter really helped me gain, a lot of intellectual friends, and I'm really grateful for them and the communities that have sort of just been in there. So Twitter was definitely helpful. I just always encourage people who want to do a similar path to sort of just go ahead and tweet out and just DM people. They're if they don't reply, well, that's fine. But like most of the times, they are gonna reply, and you're probably gonna make a good friend. You're gonna have a guest on your podcast. Like that's what you did. You replied, and we're on a podcast together. So
Yeah, it
I
was very quick. I just DM you and said, like your article. Would you like to be on the podcast? And you said, yeah. And then we set it up and that was it. So, yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Is Discord free or do you got to pay?
It's free. I think it's free. Like the free version, which pretty much works for everyone, is free. Yeah.
Okay. And how do you meditate? What's your approach?
Yeah. Good question. Like I use sort of like the guided meditation apps. I started with Headspace, but now I'm more inclined towards Waking Up, the app by Sam Harris, and that teaches non-dual mindfulness, which is a very interesting concept in its own right. But yeah, I use those two apps, and I'm actually doing a solo meditation retreat, sort of like a think week, but then I won't be carrying books with me. I'll just be carrying myself and like just my own journal and stuff like that. And I'll be going to the Himalayas next month, so recently, just pretty shortly, and yeah, I'll be there for like a good 4 days alone with my thoughts and get a mental reset done. Be humbled by the fact that I'm sort of nothing, and yeah, that should be a fun thing to do. A solo meditation retreat.
Nice. Is there a spiritual element to your meditation or like a religion, or is it straight for mindfulness, would you say?
It's straight from mindfulness.
Okay. And well, this has been a real inspiration to hear, like you're very bright and I can tell that you've got a really bright future. So it's a honor to talk with you. And
Thanks.
my final question, Arjun, is what is one action that our listeners could take to live a more purposeful, passionate life?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I um yeah, I think like there's always different people, and I can't speak for everyone else, but maybe like one piece of thing that they could do is stuff that this practice that I again like to do from time to time is making a Venn diagram of things I want to do and things I have to do. And there's an intersection between them where you write things you want to do as well as you have to do. So I think when you're like making these explicit, like things you actually have to do, which you might not want to do, and like just distinguishing between the two, and then finding for yourself what you really want to do, and then doing that, I think that can be really helpful. There is, the Eisenhower matrix, which is, if you are familiar with it, it's like you make this graph where there's like things that are important, and urgent, uh, and then things that are unimportant and not urgent. And so, like, I like that framework, but then again, that doesn't have that really a lot of intent. I don't find there being some intention in that, like as much intention as there would be in a question as things I want to do and things I have to do. So making that, Venn diagram thing, and then just yeah, if you're having a lot of things that you having to do and not doing a lot of things you want to do, I think just course correct from there, and yeah, live a more meaningful life.
Awesome. Well, Arjun, you've given us a lot of great ideas to think about, and thank you very much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Scott. It was wonderful chatting.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Hopefully, you've learned something to help you become more joyful, productive, and fulfilled. So let's keep that momentum going. Text or email me to schedule a free consult call to get you moving in the right direction. By the end of this session, you'll have a complete list of all the hats that you wear, and we'll probably uncover a few important hats that you should be wearing, but you're not. You're meant to do great things. Contact me to take the first step. Text 774-230-3928 or email me scottsnow1234@gmail.com. Do it now.